But again, could we have a proposer and a seconder, please? Okay. Thank you. So item 5 is the Police and Fire Reform Progress Update report by Chief Executive and Clerk to the Police, Fire and Rescue Authority. I presume we'll all have had a chance over the break to read through these reports quite thoroughly. So is there anything you would like to add to this report?
Thank you, Convener. Obviously, I'd hope that the report speaks for itself and it's here for members to debate, challenge and scrutinise. There are, however, two issues. One, which is intimated in the report, which is to report back on where we are with preemption clauses. But the second, if I could just highlight a particular issue. What we have to remember is that the Dumfries and Galloway Council, as both the Police and Fire and Rescue Authority and also as the transferring employer, does have duty of care in respect of our employees. And in respect of TUPE provisions, what we normally have is that there are rights associated with being in permanent contracts. When you are on a temporary contract, particularly when you're into transfer arrangements, then you don't have those rights, and one of the presumptions can be, Convener, that you're into a redundancy situation. What I think it's appropriate, and while it's in the report, perhaps it's not highlighted as well as we should. I think that this committee and the council, as an employer, needs to commend the actions, particularly of the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, in their treatment of the 18 affected cleaning staff, a number of whom were on temporary contracts. Now, these are individuals who are the lowest paid employees. They also are working in remote communities where employment opportunities are very limited. And for them, this is actually, as with all employment opportunities, this is something actually very important. The fact that they're accepting the business case that obviously all people working need to be in a clean, safe environment, and have accepted the principle that even those on the temporary contracts can transfer, I think is something that should be commended. And I think it's just part of our due diligence on all affected staff. This is something that we want to continue to work through. So that's just one issue to highlight. The second is on preemption clauses. And from what I've just said in respect to the cleaning staff, it's always good to put things in speech marks to say what is the right thing to do. And I think that the view and the will of members of this committee has been that the right thing to do is to make sure that we don't lose our interests in, or the community interest in particular properties, which down the line could be declared surplus or cease to be used for police and fire and rescue services. When we muted this to those who are leading on the reform team, the first thing that we encountered was it's normally the first thing that happens when you approach civil servants with something that's new, different, and not quite in the rule book. Can't do that. We have this financial manual, we have these kind of procedures, and we don't think that this is something that can be made to happen. The approach usually is when you meet a barrier like that, you can either go into two ways, which is you can go into this non-productive whole series of emails and memos, and you can fill a lot of files, or you can actually say, let's cut the corner, which is what we've done, and we arranged that at the opportunity meeting that the police convener, Councillor Thompson, had with Kenny McCaskill, that this issue would be raised. And I think what we got, again, and I won't speak for the convener, I'll allow him to put the words in, but my understanding is that, again, what we got there, as we did when the convener met with Mr. Emery, was, yeah, that appears to be the right thing to do. We can't do anything that's illegal. Let's see if we can't find a way, let's go into can-do to make this happen. And what we now have is, from the meeting that the police convener had yesterday with the Cabinet Secretary, this has now been put as an item of business on the National Pillow Board, at which you are being represented by Mr. Garrett, who's a really good negotiator, probably better than me at negotiating, and we're looking for some positive actions which will come out. Our legal advice is that the way in which the legislation is written, there is nothing to prevent this. So we appreciate that they have disposal policies and things, or disposal procedures, and we have this guidance manual which they're bound by. Local authorities are not bound by it, and we feel that the scheme does provide to allow that to happen. So we at least have kind of like cut through a lot of what would normally be the correspondence trail, and hopefully we can now progress that. So I don't know whether the convener wants to add to it, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that are thrown at me. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Yes, I'd just like to reiterate that both Vic Emery, Chair of the SPA, and Cabinet Secretary quite openly remarked that they saw the sense in trying to realise a community interest for properties that maybe down the line may become surplus to police or fire, well, in this case, police requirements. And the only, not so much barrier, but challenge was finding the way through the legislation to allow that to happen. So, as Carol's pointed out, there's a meeting today which hopefully will move a step closer to actually securing some kind of preemption clause, if you like, in that respect. I'd also like to commend the Fire and Rescue Service for the way in which the 18 staff have been dealt with in terms of that transfer. But if there's any questions that any of the members would like to ask on this report. Hamish? Thank you for that. I think I'll suspend any commendation pending the outcome of that. Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Ogilvie?
Just on the point that Carol was making about your meeting and the timescales. Now, when I read this initially, I thought, we'll have to have all this sort of agreed in that form by the end of next month. Is that right? 28th of February, I think, or something. However, if we're asking now for it to be looked at again, is that timescale still credible? Because one of the things I haven't seen is a list of what we own and what we don't own, and what we're going to transfer and what we're going to keep, of what might be useful. We take Lowburn Street, it might be a multi-agency type thing. And I apologise, I missed a couple of meetings, and I do apologise for that. However, reading this today and hearing what Carol, that throws a big question mark up about timescales, because previously we were sort of saying that it won't be the big bang on April the 1st, but then we got this press release here in the holiday period, which says Mr. Vic Emery wants everything operationally, legally and financially for day one. Now, we were talking, let's sort of just take this easily. Appreciate that. I'll come back to those other things in this document, some of the words that are flagged up. So my initial question, Chair or Convener, is the timescale. Will we be in a position, taking on board that they're going to look at this at a national level about the transfer and retaining stuff that might become community assets in future? Can we still achieve that by the 28th of February?
Carol?
Yes. What we have, and I appreciate Councillor Ogilvie has not been at all the meetings, we have already provided the committee with a complete schedule of all of the properties. We've also identified those where we feel that a preemption clause would be appropriate. You know, for example, the Lawburn, the Cornwall Mount. We've also safeguarded certain of the properties where we've got an interest like Thornhill. So that process has been done. We have also completed the work associated with the due diligence of opening up and dusting off all of the, what I call the D packages. I think the one thing, hopefully I can commend and not be corrected, which is the fact that we so far have been the only authority that was able within 24 hours to be able to source and pull out all of the D packages for the properties that we own. Now, I think that's something that not all of the other authorities can do, and I think even 2 months later, they are still trying to find the title to some of their properties. So not only have we identified them, we've actually gone through each of the deed packages. We've been able to identify, and I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure how many of you realise how complex and messy title deeds are. They are not the easiest of documents, particularly the police ones, because 20 years ago, 10 years ago even, I think, you used to have a lot of police houses attached to the properties, and we've sold off the police houses. And as a consequence, you then have servitude rights, prescriptive rights. Then when you actually look at the title deeds, some of the streets have even changed. It sounds weird, but we're talking about some of the houses that were sold off a number of years ago, so you can't even identify the numbers or the streets. So it's actually very, very complex. But we've actually gone through and we have now satisfied ourselves that we're able to confirm the title. We did have one little, I think it's always good to share, because that's when I had to go to the hairdressers again to get my roots done. When we looked at the Annan Fire and Rescue Service, Annan Fire Station, we had an extension there. And we had a nice little panic when we opened up the deed package and we looked at the plans, and we suddenly thought, whoops, have we built on something we didn't own? Don't worry, Chief Exec. So we had to do a quick check, which we've done, a title deed check, and yes, we do own it. So what we've got is some little anomalies associated with the fact that there's a tarmacked area somewhere which we confirm we don't own, so that will not transfer. We do have things like a fence, which is at Lawburn, which is giving security to the police premises, but it's not on the asset or the land that we would transfer. So these are things that we have knowledge of, and we're now in the process of resolving. On affected staff, we did have a process where it was very clear, the process and the TUPE conditions are very clear, that if you've got anybody or any individual member of staff who is over 50% of the time, and in the place of the cleaning staff, they are 100% of their time on duties associated with the Fire and Rescue Service, these people have rights in respect of transfer. I'm sorry, I'm totally unsighted in respect of the meeting that Mr. McGee has advised, and that's unfortunate. But my position and my advice would be this is not negotiable. These people have rights. They are 100%. They should transfer. And I trust the position in respect of temporary contracts will not change. So the work's been done. We've got all the information. So it's all deliverable.
Councillor Syme.
That's that sort of ties up with an issue I have regarding these transfers, and I brought it up at the last Pathfinder meeting, and I feel I need to bring it up here again, is grounds maintenance and winter maintenance. Many years ago when we transferred housing to the RSLs, there seems to have been no maintenance plans put in at the times, and I know that several of the councils still have issues on overgrown bits of land which could be inside these premises that nobody wants to cut, and it might be large car parks and pathways that nobody will take any responsibility to do any winter maintenance on them. What can we put in place to ensure that our towns and villages aren't going to finish up with bits of land in the summertime that's going to have long grass, and in the winter time won't have any maintenance, because we still have difficulties yet with that transfer? What sort of safeguards would we have that this isn't going to happen with transferred assets when we go through into the new force?
Carol, would you like to respond?
We learnt from the last transfer, we opened the title packages. We didn't, and I think that was part of the learning, the development and the improvement, which is you don't just make a presumption that because something has a label on and says that's the title package, you transfer it and it's clean. This time, our due diligence, we've been opened it up, and we have plotted and replotted. So not only do we have, if you like, the title, we have an agreed plotted plan. So that gives us the security.
Councillor Syme.
They're also as you were saying earlier, Carol, these deeds, a lot of them will be a wee bit iffy, and that could tie up with if there's bits that nobody's sort of owning, these bits are going to finish up and not get being maintained. So got that kind of added difficulty as well, as identifying who owns what.
That's for the reason that I think we have a technical term from our property services manager where he calls them iffy-diddly titles. So what we have done, which we are now going through the process of now doing that to the satisfaction of the two authorities that we're transferring to, is we are now plotting the titles so that there's no dispute in respect of we've got accurate boundaries. So what we have now is we transfer a plotted land, very clear. So, for example, there was, in respect of the Annan Fire Station again, there was absolute clarity needed in respect of a little strip at the side and a car park. So we've plotted it and we're giving the assurance that the titles, they may be very convoluted, but we've been through them, gives confidence that that land is and will be transferred and become in the ownership of the two new authorities.
Sorry for going back against you, but would there be as such a maintenance plan, winter maintenance plan and a ground maintenance plan put in place for these properties?
What we have obviously is, and it's part of the information schedule, we have a whole raft of what we call contracts and areas where we need to have agreements between ourselves as a potential provider of grounds maintenance with the new authorities. What we have is absolute clarity, the two new authorities, all of that land is your responsibility, and we as a council are saying, and if you wish us to maintain it for you, we're happy to sign a contract.
Councillor Nicholl and then Councillor Ogilvie.
Thanks, Convener. Two things. One, on the back of what John was just saying about transferring and getting it right, we're still arguing about who's cutting grass with DGHP or whoever. That has got to be, the plans have got to be dead accurate, so to know exactly where the boundaries are, etc. And we've got to get that right this time because we made a hash of it the last time and we're still paying the price for it. The other thing that's kind of been flagged up and what Hamish said about the cleaners, will that come back to us in a further report, whatever comes out of that, or will that just be a managerial thing that happens as time goes on? Or if there's a hiccup, will it come back to us?
It will come back. I said a paid service. These are my staff. We have an agreement with the Fire and Rescue Committee. I do not believe that a public meeting is a place to talk about 11 staff who can be identified quite clearly. And my position is that the rules are very clear. We have an agreement, both agreed with the new Chief Fire Officer and the new divisional area, whatever they call themselves. And I have no intention of annihilating the rights of my staff on transfer. So I will be happy to engage vigorously on this issue. I know what they're trying to do, and I'm not allowed to let employees of Dumfries and Galloway suffer because of it. Sorry, can I deal with Councillor Nicholl's first one? I think we've got to make it very clear for the members that these assets transfer, they are not ours. We have no say in how they are maintained beyond influencing perhaps an element of a local policing plan. However, the debate between the Chief Constable's powers on operational policing and the powers of the board still have to be resolved, and I'd imagine these would sit with the new police authority. But I think it would be wrong to say that we will be absolutely know who's responsible for what. But I think members can't leave this meeting believing that beyond an ability perhaps to influence or make representation, the actual requirement for maintenance, etc., will lie with the new incoming authority. So I think what we need to do as part of what Carl's doing in the Pathfinder, how would we liaise on a conflict resolution for elected members if due to future cuts, maintenance becomes an issue. I think those are the issues that we need to clarify, because obviously that's an asset I don't believe would be contained in local policing plans, but I think we need to find through the Pathfinder work and engaging with the government, how would we raise concerns about assets in the heart of our communities. But I think it is, just for absolute clarity, the role of maintenance and other issues will be the responsibility of the Scottish Police Authority, but we do have absolute clarity on who owns what.
Do you want to come back?
Very briefly, I'm delighted that the Chief Executive and his staff will be pursuing the employees' proper rights vigorously. Delighted.
Thank you. And Councillor Ogilvie?
Thanks to the Chair for letting me back in. I think these three things are connected. If you look at the bullet point at the bottom of page 15 about Scrutiny and Performance Committee, item 4.1, the second last bullet point, amendment to the Council Scheme of Administration, delegation to committees, and then I loosely tie this one in, is in 4.38, cost of support and the new accountability arrangements. As I say, I apologise for not being at some of the meetings. This might have been discussed already. Is what how we're going to is it going to be a new committee, or are we going to leave it to scrutiny and performance, or because we're talking about all these things, and I just wonder how they all tie together going forward. You know, come April the 1st, we won't be a police authority anymore, or a fire authority. Have we got something in mind to replace it from a monitoring point of view?
I'm not sure if that's really for here or if that's for the Pathfinder Committee really to resolve it. Would you like to come?
Yeah. What I have to advise is that you have an agreed action programme for addressing this issue, because obviously it is business critical for the Dumfries and Galloway Council. What we had at the last Pathfinder was an update report from Ms Manson providing details of the different scenarios for how this engagement, how performance management, how scrutiny could be undertaken. There is a process, I understand, at the moment where officers are now engaging through the political groups, and a report will be presented to the Pathfinder at its meeting on the 21st of January, which will be looking at a series of options for how engagement and scrutiny could be taken forward. That will then be taken through all the due processes of consultation, ending up with a final agreement at the full council. And I'm so pleased, while I blabber on, that Liz has come up to the table, because you can always tell when you actually have very long sentences that I'm trying to sift through my memory. But I think there's a special meeting called in your diary for the full council, which is 28th of March or something, which will allow you to put your final stamp on this is how our decision-making structures will look like. This is how performance management, how the area framework, how decision-making, and how we will scrutinise, and just as importantly, how we will engage with the two new authorities. And Chairman, because I waffled, I'll leave it to Liz to be much more precise.
Thank you, Carol. Do you want to come in, Liz?
I don't know if I can guarantee that, Carol. Yes, the discussion about what will replace the Police and Fire Committee is going to take place initially in the ad hoc subcommittee that full council set up just before Christmas, with the specific remit to look at your scheme of delegation. That ad hoc subcommittee, I think members are currently being sought from the political groups for that subcommittee. There will be then a report to the Pathfinder about what the options are, and the Pathfinder will make a recommendation to this committee, which then has in its remit to make a recommendation to full council. It sounds perhaps a slightly clunky process, but the idea is to give you the opportunity to discuss the options. The reason that it hasn't started yet is twofold. First of all, that it was felt you needed to see the draft local plans so that you could get a feel for what it is that you are going to be scrutinising and looking at before you could decide what kind of structure you would want to have to deal with that. And the second issue is that clearly at national level there's all sorts of different pilots and discussions taking place. And indeed, quite recently at the Conveners Forum, there was a presentation from Mr Whetton, who came down to previous meetings, and they gave some examples of some of the possible routes. You might want to add it to the remit of policy and resources. You might want to have a subcommittee of full council. You might want to involve partners. So there are different models being looked at across Scotland. And what will happen is the ad hoc sub and the Pathfinder will be given these examples for you to look at and see what's the best for our region.
Councillor Ogilvie.
Sorry, I don't want to be pedantic, but we're just told that on the 21st of January there's going to be a report. Liz is saying that she's going around the groups. I've got this wee subgroup that's going to go. And it says in here, and I'll just bring in my final point at the top of page 16, about a comprehensive, robust engagement of consultation programme on the draft local policing plan. Totally agree. We should know what we're going to be scrutinising. So it's how it all ties in the timescales, Convener, and I'm sure you'll tell me, Liz.
The next meeting of the Pathfinder, we're going to bring the proposed engagement programme. Again, we haven't been able to do that as yet because the local plan's guidance from the new teams at national level, the guidance has only just been coming out over the last couple of weeks. But at a meeting on Tuesday, the Constabulary and the Fire and Rescue Service confirmed that they will have draft plans ready for consultation by the end of January.
Any further questions? Councillor Syme.
Chair, this is a little bit of a laddie question. What would the Pathfinder group's role be after the 1st of April? Would they go on to have a scrutiny and monitoring role, and how long would we think that would be for? What's the sort of remit of the Pathfinder group after the 1st of April?
I don't know whether that's one for Carol perhaps, but the remit of the Pathfinder group is specifically in the run-up to the transfer. What the council might choose to put in place after that is up to the council, I guess. But certainly our current thinking is that the Pathfinder will conclude its work once it's agreed the recommendations to go forward.
Thank you. Okay, are we happy now then to go to the recommendations for item number 5? Okay. So 2.1 and 2.2, if we're in agreement. Yep, thank you. Item number 6 is the strategic priorities for Scottish Police Service and the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service framework. Would you like to add to this report?
Thank you. Just to highlight, we'll probably take them two separate discussions, which is probably easiest. We've had an extension of 1 day for the police service priorities, so that your comments today will feed into the partnership response, and that will be submitted tomorrow. So we're talking about a whole day's extra reprieve to get the update in. And I'm happy just to go through the two responses and pick up any comments or additional suggestions that members may have in the responses that you would like to see going from Dumfries and Galloway. So if I could take you to page 35. Sorry. Yeah. And just, sorry, page 41, sorry, and any comments on our response to the strategic police priorities?
Do we have any comments we'd like to add?
Yep.
I think from the sound of silence there. I'm sorry, Councillor Ogilvie.
Yeah, I read this quite carefully, and to be fair, I think we've portrayed the aspirations of Dumfries and Galloway pretty well through our responses. I don't know if other members have got. I couldn't find of any additional thing I'd like to say. You've captured the localisms, the strengths that we have, which is one of our fears of losing. It depends how much notice they take of it, but I've got to say that it's a good report. Well done.
I'm just wondering, one of the things that for the executive group, that well, talking about the strategic priorities, there is perhaps something about how do we communicate the local context on a national basis. I don't think that the document we got here about strategic priorities, actually, whether or not we need to think about adding perhaps a bullet somewhere into it that talks about the need for effective mechanisms for the local council. Look at priority 3, it talks about very much we're reflecting that the loss of councillor input, the need for local capacity and support, but there is perhaps, if members would want to consider, a bullet that's needed about ensuring an effective method for local elected bodies to communicate on areas of concern. Because even though we're setting the priorities here, if we have an issue, how do we then reflect back through our committee? Where does it go? Does it go to the police board? Does it go to the Chief Constable? Does it go in the delivery of these priorities? And I think that that's a gap, even in the Emerging Pathfinder, that is still to be explored. How do we make that? If this council's committee or this council has a view on elements of the priority, how do we communicate that and where? So I think it's something about ensuring that strong and effective communication is enabled from the local accounted bodies to the national accounted body. I think that would then, otherwise we're sort of making not negative points, but the real point is, if that is the new landscape, how does it work? We would want it to be absolutely effective to make sure the local priorities are clearly articulated in national context. I would suggest under priority 3, because above it we set the context, we're losing it, we need access to special support, we've got rurality, and then something about making sure there are effective communication and consultation from local elected bodies to the national appointed body would make our case that that's what we're interested in. How do we influence the priorities national level directly if we don't have a councillor elected on the police authority?
Councillor Nicola, you want to come in there?
Yeah, I was, when I read this and back of what I heard at Area Committee yesterday, when Chief Inspector McCallum announced that they wanted local members, elected members, to meet with our local police commanders to give our local priorities, and there was a different time scale from this. It was a time scale to the end of February, I think, or I might be wrong in that. And I've actually arranged a meeting with our local commander for tomorrow, in fact. So it was for us to put in our local priorities as what we wanted to see. I'm hoping that all that, what we put in, will filter through and reinforce this at some stage. I don't know if that is ever going to happen.
Well, with the addition outlined by the Chief Executive, which I think we would welcome, can we maybe add that in?
And now if I could direct you to page 45, which is the consultation on the fire and rescue framework. Clearly, the number of strategic priorities in the draft makes this a slightly more lengthy document. But you would see in the opening suggestion that the Dumfries and Galloway response basically suggests to them that they have 9 strategic priorities, drawing on much of the information here, but so much of that is operational, about how they will do their business rather than it being their direction, that we feel that it would be appropriate to narrow them down to give that clarity. So again, if I just go through page by page, if there's any comments on the document.
Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a few comments in it before you go through them, sort of point by point, Liz. Going back to page 35, which is the consultation on the fire and rescue, in point 2 there, the statement says that sustainable economic growth as a central ambition across the Scottish public sector and crucial role to play in helping to achieve that purpose throughout the Fire and Rescue Service. Now I have issue with that statement. To me, the Fire and Rescue Service is, as its name suggests, it's a public protection, prevention and rescue service. And it has no connection to sustainable economic growth. It is not an agency capable of economic growth. And it can only contribute towards that by way of cuts to the service, which in turn could put lives at risk. So I have issue with that particular statement in that consultation. So I'm just making that point clear. As far as the D&G responses are concerned, there is a common theme, and I agree with Liz, there's a common theme that the Scottish Fire and Rescue Services, the strategies are being confused with operational issues. And they need to be thinned out, as suggested, and they're too intense and complicated.
Thank you. Any further comments that you'd like to add, members? Councillor Ogilvie.
What I found, the fire one compared to the police one was it was set out in priorities and it was easy to follow. This is like, it's random and it just sort of rambles on and you can't narrow it down like you could with the police one. How do we add something? So the question I asked Liz, that maybe you can't answer, is why is it a different format? I mean, you know, I'm not, you know, I've been here a long time at these committees and usually there's some sort of similarity between the two services, especially from a consultation point of view, and this one just seems a bit out there, you know.
I think my answer to that would be that they're two separate national bodies.
I think it's not a question I think that we should ask Hamish to go anywhere near. But I would have to say what this reflects is a new management team that don't have the broader range of strategic planning skills that are present within the constabulary in Scotland. And what you have here is a document written by people who haven't really done strategic and operational documents, and they're trying to take it forward in that basis. I think they've got bones of a very good document. And my response to the civil servants this morning when I was reading through the papers, when I was speaking on another matter, was that perhaps if they just picked up Dumfries and Galloway document, they might have had a good starting point of how you put a strategic document together. So I think it does reflect, I think, and also the different stages of formation of the two bodies. That in many ways, the people producing the police documents have been working on it for 18 months. Many of the people now in the fire are new, and the new teams coming to it, and this reflects it. But I think that if we don't get that clarity in here on what they're about, it makes it very difficult, I think, for us as a local authority to have that clarity of understanding to take down to our communities. And I think the idea that you could take this document to a community council would put you in a bit of a pickle. I think that a much simpler document would be much easier for us to start to communicate as public protection. So that's where it came from, and I think they are quite receptive to it because we're not the only committee that's going to be feeding back saying that to them.
Perhaps what we could do, if once we've got the proposal at the end, we could put a kind of frontispiece and say, here's what we think your strategic national priorities are, so that they can look at a kind of one-page thing, like, as you were saying, the police, it's nice and easy to read that. So we could just kind of put a frontispiece on it with what we think is their strategic priority.
Now, did you want to go through this, Liz?
The first area is obviously about partnership working. Any comments on the Dumfries and Galloway proposed response at the end of that page? Over the next page, equality and diversity. Then environmental responsibility. And complaints. Risk management. And the D&G response is actually at the top of page 48 for that one.
Councillor
But on the risk management, I remember one of the reports back was doing well but could do better. That wasn't that long ago either. No, I thought we were a bit ahead of the game on the risk management in this area. Just nationally, is risk management going to be, like generic, or is it going to be specific to each area because of the different demands?
And I don't know the answer to that, but one of the things perhaps we could enhance that proposed priority by saying delivers the benefits reform and builds on best practice already in existence, or something like that, just to demonstrate that some areas are good at it already.
Sorry, Liz. Chief Exec.
Sorry, can I bring members back perhaps to the complaints one? Comment I've got there, I understand providing efficient victim service that delivers benefits to forum, but I'm wondering whether or not our response should actually be more about the point of complaints to be dealt effectively is that they are dealt for as in locality as close to the complainant as possible, which would then provide a link back into the role of our committee to scrutinise and ensure. Because I think the complaint system is not about delivering benefits of reform. It's actually about having it resolved and learned from, and the best place for that is at first point of contact with the complainant. So that I think if we could put something in that has to provide a service that seeks to resolve complaints at the source, etc., and learns from it, and then delivers the benefits of reform. Because without that, I think that doesn't really emphasise the local, we want them resolved locally without escalating into a national system.
And then moving on to page 48 about prevention and protection. Evaluation. Response and resilience.
Councillor Ogilvie.
Sorry, on response, I mean, it's well documented that Dumfries and Galloway relies heavily on its retained firefighters, which then have some sort of target out-turn time. So our response is pretty good, it's pretty robust, and it's held up to any challenge, really. So if that's captured in our response, we only have one full-time station, that's in Dumfries. So that has to be recognised. We're not quite the same as a lot of other police authorities, fire authorities.
I think perhaps we might, in terms of the order of the strategic priorities, it would perhaps, picking up Councillor Peacock's point earlier about the kind of overriding purpose of the organisation must surely be. So that might be perhaps the first one rather than partnership and other issues coming first. So we could order our suggested priorities and put this one at the very top of the list.
Councillor Syme.
Just to tie with that, and I suppose it comes back to information as well. We're only about 2 months down the road, and there's very little going out to the public. And the public are starting to sort of say things like, is our local fire station going to go? And if it goes, we won't have the same response as what they have now, because we're in Upper Nistdale, it covers, Kirkconnell, Kellerholm, and I've never ever heard one complaint against response times with the fire service. But now people are saying, are things going to get centralised? Is our local fire station going to go? In that case, we're not going to have the same response time. So I think there will be a bit of work with the public there as well, starting from now. And it's the same with the police as well. People are getting a wee bit confused about there going to be a single non-emergency number and things like that, but they're not getting any further information out. And I think it needs to be more than meetings, because it's not everybody that can go to meetings. I think there is work needing done with the media and that now to let people know what exactly is going to happen in April the 1st.
Hamish, do you want to come in on this initially?
Aye, that's what I mean. And you've confirmed that way as aforehand. It's just sometimes difficult in small communities. Once the jungle drums get going, they'd rather listen to somebody talking to them in the shop or at the street corner than listen to us councillors. So it's getting the message right to the individuals that things aren't going to change.
Yeah, if Carol were here, I'm sure she'd be telling you that the project which she's managing has got a communications plan, and as part of that, it is about getting messages to the public about reassuring people that services on the ground will remain. But we can certainly feed that back to the project to make sure that these messages are getting out and are complementary and linking into the national messages that Hamish was referring to.
It strikes me this would be ideal, because when you go to the public consultation, so the area committees and whatever, they'll ask these questions. So if we could, that'd be a good time to get that sort of information out.
There's perhaps something then in that, our proposed priority then, about the continuation of response times, to make your point about that, the need for continuity there, about communities accessing fire and rescue services to the same standard that there is just now. So we can make that change there. The next one is about workforce. There's a couple of pages about that. And the proposed Dumfries and Galloway response to the workforce issues is on page 52.
I presume in the first line of your response is a typo?
Yes, an extra R. Thank you. R's. And the next one is about more equal access to specialist resources and national capacity, which is an interesting concept because that presumes that there isn't equal access at the moment. But clearly the point again about Dumfries and Galloway needing strategic support staff because of their importance beyond their sort of straight role in police and fire has been captured there.
Thanks, Chair, for access to specialist stuff. I mean, we've developed specialist flood stuff, and we've got the pods and that, which we were leading. Dumfries and Galloway was leading the way a wee bit there. What other specialist stuff that we need to access? I can't think of where we're not self-efficient, other than maybe some additional high volume pumps or something that we might need in a crisis situation.
I think what they're actually referring to there is the specialists like fire safety enforcement officers, or in terms of if you had another foot and mouth, then you could bring a lot of more resources from out with Scotland. it appertains more to other areas of Scotland, I would suggest, than Dumfries and Galloway. I don't think that other areas are as well established and have the robust, resilient arrangements that we have. So, yeah, we in terms of a D&G, it's a hard one to respond to, but in the context of a wider Scotland, then it is, I can see the relevance to it.
Okay. Fire investigation then is the next issue. And then the last item, which I think is of particular interest, is about the local plans. And I think perhaps capturing the point that the Chief Exec made in relation to the police priorities, perhaps there's something in there about the communication and engagement, about making sure that we're able to engage with them and that they take into account local issues. So we could enhance that one perhaps with that same concept.
Chair, I'd like to put something in here, and I don't know if it can here with the local issues. It might not fit in anywhere because I've been trying to put it in somewhere, but I would like to see within the fire service the opportunities for young people that would like to join the fire service that don't have a base locally. If you don't live where there's an actual fire station, you don't get the opportunity to join the fire services because you need to be living within a certain distance to the station. And I've never known, I think there's only one that I've ever known that has joined the fire brigade in Dumfries through his own efforts. Especially in areas of high unemployment and that up the road. Young people that would like to join the fire service don't really get the opportunity. And I suppose they've been restricted a bit just because of where they are geographically. I wonder if there could be anything in the future to try and engage young people from your rural areas into joining the fire service. I don't know how we do it, but I think it's unfair that they don't get the opportunity.
There could be something then perhaps in the aspect about the workforce, that the strategic priority we've said the SFRS will provide an effective, efficient service that delivers the benefits of reform, but we could add in something like and expands or provides opportunities to engage the widest possible employment opportunities, or something. We could put something in about opportunity. Yeah.
It will be a national recruitment. You will apply to join the fire service, and you will not be allowed under law to state you've got to live within a certain period, so that'd be illegal. So, in fact, it probably was illegal under law, that's stretching the point, but no, you would apply to join nationally the fire service, and then it will not be because there is a vacancy in Dumfries. The application will be national, and therefore the placement will be to where there are vacancies. So therefore you won't be excluded because you don't live near the fire station. That's how the system will work. There will be national applications for posts.
I just thought, sorry, Chair, with a single force coming in, it might open the doors a bit more for children, for young people in rural areas.
It's just like Hamish come back in this as well.
Yeah, the service has actually gone down that route already. There is one point of recruitment for whole-time firefighters now. It's a portal within My Job Scotland. So when those whole-time jobs come out, they are advertised nationally. Where the difference lies, and you're actually absolutely right about the amount of time it takes to within which you're allowed to live closest to a fire station, is in terms of a retained duty system, and that's in order that we're able to get the turnout times and the response times that were alluded to earlier, so that those recruitment campaigns will still be done locally, because it's local people supporting local communities and providing resilience to those communities. So there's a two-track approach. If you wish to become a full-time firefighter and it's your whole-time job, then it's done centrally. And you're absolutely right, it could be anywhere in Scotland. I'm not sure how that will pan out if you can choose an area that you would prefer to to be allocated to. But if you're going for a job, then you'll probably be prepared to move anywhere. And the other track is if locally, if it's for a part-time retained station, then it'll be done locally and done through local recruitment.
Would there be anything like that open to like school leavers or college leavers, or I take it there's an age limit like there is with the police?
None. There are no age limits. You're not allowed by law now. There's no, under equality and diversity, that you cannot have any impediment for someone to actually apply. So it's wide open. There are no age limits.
Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, just with the local plans in both services, actually, I mean, it's really, it needs to be embedded within the local plans, a reassurance to the public, because there is that big uncertainty and even fearfulness that that the service that is provided at the moment from Dumfries and Galloway is going to be diminished because it's been centralised. And we cannot get away from that. The public throughout still, they need that extra reassurance. And I know Hamish has given us that here today, but as he said, in the future, we can't guarantee that. So the local plans that coming out, I think it needs to be embedded within there to reassure the public that these services will not be diminished, especially throughout Dumfries and Galloway. And I think that's an opportunity within that to have that. And it's just to try and encourage the public and try and allay some of the fears that they have, because there's no doubt that the uncertainty and the fears are out there. And I think throughout the local plan is a good way to try and embed that and get that reassurance back to them.
Thank you for that. Are we happy then, in terms of recommendations? Obviously, there's been a few additions, but if you've kept a note of those, then are we happy to go with the recommendations for item 6? Yeah, with the understanding that the feedback is added in. Okay, thank you. Now, as I said earlier, there's two items here. I'll take the public one first, if that's okay, just for logistical reasons. So we'll just get this passed around and everybody can have a look at it. Okay, so this is the temporary arrangements for the discharge of Deputy Chief Constable responsibilities, and I'll hand you over to Pat, who can explain exactly what this is about.
Members will recall that last year Mike McCormick was transferred on a secondment basis to the police reform team, as a result of which Kate Thompson took up the rank on a temporary basis of Deputy Chief Constable. Kate was successful in applying for the command course and is now away on the command course. And what we've been able to secure is arrangements with the reform team that Mike McCormick, because we're still required by law to have a Deputy Chief Constable to oversee the complaints matters in particular, Mike, who has been successful in securing one of the Assistant Chief Constable's role, will not actually be sworn in as Assistant Chief to enable him to remain effectively as our Deputy Chief Constable. He will retain oversight of all complaint matters. All other matters that were within his role in relation to the Deputy Chief Constable will be absorbed by myself and the senior management team for this period up to 1st of April. So it's just to let you know that Mike effectively is still our Deputy Chief Constable, and Kate will revert to the Chief Superintendent's role.
Are there any questions anybody would like to ask? Councillor Nicholl?
Yeah, just for clarification, does that mean that if the horrible situation that you might take ill or whatever, that Mike would be acting as the Chief Constable?
Yes. Yep.
Could I just go back? Would he have to come back to Dumfries to fulfil that role, or would he still be doing two jobs?
Essentially, we'd have to come back to Dumfries to fulfil that role. Likewise, if I was away for a leave for any short period, he would have covered, but I've no intention of that for that period.
Sorry, are we happy to go with the recommendations? Okay. Thank you.